A big first of the week show. Welcome to lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we are with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can find us easily. Type in lcpioneers.com live, and then also check us out on YouTube after the fact, on-demand watching available at youtube.com/lcpios. We appreciate everyone who has been able to join us, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, and different members from the Lewis and Clark College community. Hi, everyone. I am Ryan Goff. I'm the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We're the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and members of the NCAA Division III ranks with over 430 institutions nationwide, a chance for our student athletes to compete on a national scale, plus a member of the Northwest Conference with other institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. Our student athletes compete across 19 intercollegiate athletic programs at Lewis and Clark on our beautiful Portland, Oregon campus, just 6 miles southwest of downtown Portland, Oregon. And we continue to have these conversations and the opportunity to check in with different coaches as well. And that'll be the case today as we'll welcome in head coach of Pioneers Swimming, Chris Fantz, talk to him for the second time on the show as we moved into about the 6th week of school, fall 2020 semester underway at our Portland campus. And so we'll check in, see how things are going for him, and also reflect back on the past season too, because it's always exciting to see what's happened since the last time we had a chance to talk to Chris on the show. So a few minutes away from that. If you do want to get involved, you can by commenting on our Facebook Live comments. You can also email us anytime, sports@lclark.edu. If you have a guest suggestion or a question for an upcoming guest or for our guest today, Chris, we'd love to hear from you on our email, sports@lclark.edu. You can also reach us on our other social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram, two of those. You can find us at lcpioneers.com as well. We were excited this past weekend. We had our first PioStream watch back, a chance to have former and current student athletes plus head coach Jim Tersey join us and look at the double overtime win for women's soccer against Willamette from last October. It was last October 30th, and it was kind of in the middle of this stretch where Lewis and Clark had an ultimate amount of success. It was really a good run for Coach Tersey's team, and that was fun. We had two student athletes also join us in chat. A lot of questions were asked of them, and we're planning to do that more with the volleyball next up, probably a week from Saturday. So stay tuned to our social media platforms and lcpioneers.com to get more information about that. Also be on the lookout too, anticipating a possibility of having a replay of the PioStream watchback for women's soccer in the near future. So excited about that. You can watch it on demand, of course. It was already aired on Sunday, and on our YouTube page where we have this playlist of all of our past lcpioneers.com live episodes on our YouTube channel, you can find the replay of that women's soccer PioStream watchback. Our featured student athletes of the week, known as Pioneers of the Week, available at lcpioneers.com. Encourage you to check those out. Right now, our featured athletes from women's soccer, Becca McCullough, and from men's rowing, Nick Campen, both former guests of lcpioneers.com live. And then our website, too, we shared this morning two student athletes in partnership with the Bates Center for Entrepreneurship and Leadership, winners of the Event Oregon competition, which is a really cool opportunity for both Matt Brown of men's basketball and Ramez Adia of men's tennis, where they won $10,000 with their Safe Start invention. Be sure to check that out. It's at lcpioneers.com right now. They're going to continue to pursue that with all the hard work they've already put in. And now that we're in October, Homecoming at Home continues. The easiest way to find out what we have going on for that, go to go.lclark.edu/homecoming, or you can also go to lcpioneers.com, and we have a homecoming banner right below the main stories. So a lot going on in both athletics and throughout the Lewis and Clark College world. Certainly appreciate you taking the time to stay connected with us. And now we welcome in our guest for today, the head coach of Pioneers Swimming. We have a good chance for the second time on the show to welcome in Chris Fantz to the show. Chris, thanks for taking some time out early in this week to get a hold of us and give us an update on what's going on with Pioneer Swimming. In fact, you even were gracious enough to bump yourself up 2 days for me, which I certainly appreciate. Always like talking to you, Chris. How are things going? As I mentioned, we're into the fall semester. How are you? How is your team holding up so far?
Yeah, well, it's good to talk to you, Ryan. Thanks for having me back to the show and visiting a little bit. And thanks for asking. Things are good. Things are going well. It's October, and swim season usually starts about the third week of September every year. And As everybody knows, this has been a heck of a year, and with all the uncertainty, all the planning and wondering and craziness, we still managed to start swim season about a week later than we normally would have. So we're pretty much on schedule and building into our training. So we didn't start full speed ahead, but we had a couple workouts and then three last week, 3 days last week, and now we're almost up to full speed, and we'll be on our full 6 day a week schedule by next week. So that's exciting. I think with for spending so many months, like a lot of us did, wondering and finagling and trying to figure out how we do college sports in a pandemic, and also how to communicate like as openly as possible the things we know and often don't know with all our student athletes, to be able to get them onto a pool deck and swimming uh, around their teammates is pretty huge. So that's been really big. That's the new exciting feature in my life, certainly, is having swim season happening. As most people know, all of our competition for all our sports at LC is kicked to the spring semester and after January 1. But to see our team doing the things they do and training together and having that community is pretty great.
Yeah, with all the complexities, NCAA and Northwest Conference, and all the moving parts with county and state, as you mentioned, that's pretty remarkable. We will keep everyone updated too with competition. I had those questions even over the weekend on some of our social media channels. Go to lcpioneers.com/COVID, and we'll continue to update the latest from the Northwest Conference in regards to competition there. You mentioned now having the swimmers be able to be doing activity in amongst all that complexity, and that includes your new
Mm-hmm.
swimmers. And that's one thing we didn't have a chance really to talk about the last time you were on. Give us an introduction to some of your first year swimmers and aspects about this group that you're really excited about.
Yeah, every year you have your incoming class and this idea of who's coming in, and we work through the summer uh, trying to get them connected with the returning team. Our returners are, I think, both pretty good at trying to welcome people, and they're also it's motivated by an excitement on their part, as returners, that they really want to meet their new teammates and get to know them. However you can do that over the summer, and so they start reaching out to me and asking, like, when do we get to connect with them, and how many are they, and where are they from, and different questions from different people. But it all kind of boils down to like an excitement about meeting who's joining their family, and it's kind of a neat feeling. And so that builds up over the summer, and then into the beginning of the school year, meeting in person and connecting a little more uh, directly. But then taking that kind of next leap of seeing the new freshman class in the pool with their teammates and swimming back and forth and doing that thing that we do is pretty cool. So we have a smallish classes on the men's and women's side, but positive and good energy. And certainly the last just few weeks we've been training or approaching their training with some zeal and good energy and work ethic, and just an openness to getting back in shape, because swimmers all over the country, all over the world, are grappling with a wide range of fitness levels they've been able to maintain through the last 6 months. Some of them haven't had pools, some have, and so it puts like an extra spin on our normal beginning of swim season, where it usually takes a few weeks to get everybody on the same page. So I think this class is excited to be training and in the water, and looking at things, looking at their strokes, making little adjustments, and also I think for all our kids, kind of remembering how it all works. Like I said, some of them swam more over the summer or last spring, and some of them just absolutely couldn't. Some of them became open water swimmers because there are more open bodies of water that were available than pools, when a lot of pools have been shut down. Yeah, so it is awesome to see these kids in the pool and the ones who self-select for the distance group when we break the kids out into different groups, and they just like immediately feel like there's a home there, and that feels right, and kind of sorting things out of how we're training and where, and so it's been great so far. We're just a couple weeks, a handful of workouts in, but I feel like we're headed in a good direction with our incoming class.
Chris Fantz, our guest, joining us on lcpioneers.com live, Pioneers head swimming coach. And I have always really admired swimming senior days as one of my favorite events that you have, because I think you do such a great job with your seniors, and they just seem to get such a kick out of the speeches that you deliver ahead of time. And you mentioned some of the excitement behind this returning class, getting to meet some of the incoming group. What about the seniors or some of this returning class from a competitive standpoint, some of their accomplishments that you're really looking forward to seeing come to fruition as soon as possible?
Yeah, we have a pretty substantial senior class, both in numbers of students and in the performances they've had the last few years. So it's a class with a number of school record holders, individual events, relay events, and people who been contributing to our team, both in leadership and work ethic, and the most like base putting points on the board in championships, across kind of all the different spectrums of what people bring to a team. And so, seeing them kind of kick off their senior year when, we finished our season last February, and we were super lucky, and I think now with some time to reflect, super grateful that we finished our championship and made it through conference, but still lived out part of the spring on campus and part of it at home, seeing all our spring student athletes have, essentially the rug pulled out from under them. And so kind of leaving that taste in people's mouth of your whole season can be cut short because there's a bigger thing happening in the world right now. It kind of gives you pause and makes you think, well, certainly I'd imagine a lot of our kids have wondered, will we have a season this year? What's that going to look like? And right now we are, and we're doing the work to prepare to be able to compete in January as we figure out those pieces. And so to answer your question about, how they're doing early on, I'm pretty impressed with just generally, like anecdotally, how our team looks in the water. And I was visiting with a recruit yesterday and her mother, and they asked, like, how do they look in the water? Because we're all coming from places where some teams have been out of their pools for half a year, and they're trying to piece things back together, and it's been rough. And I could answer honestly that I was a little surprised how good things seem to be coming together, and whether the baseline level of swimming fitness is there for everybody or not. Actually look all right in the pool, and that's pretty neat. It's always like I said, it's a several week process of getting closer to on the same page, but a number of our returners came in fit and have been active, whether they're putting in a ton of laps or not. They're fit and they're healthy, and quite a few of them look better heading into this season than maybe they did heading into last season. Again, those are just observations. I was talking to my friend Sam, our rowing coach, and the stopwatches don't come out of the drawer for those first couple weeks usually, and so now I've gotten the stopwatch out of the drawer and yet not timed anything, and that's kind of it's something you hold off on for a little bit as we shake the rust off and get people moving. But just again, observationally, things look pretty good in the water for probably having fewer than 10 practices under our belt at this point. So that's exciting, and these returning classes are leading the charge there and doing some good work and working hard, and a lot of them look more like how they finished the season last year than I expected in the way they're moving back and forth and doing things well. I even thought that in practice yesterday, just seeing the way some of them are coming off the walls into strong breakouts and good stroke tempo in very short bursts. Obviously, we're still building, physiologically into the training, but it looked more like last January and February in those little bursts than I expected. So that's pretty rad.
Thanks for joining us on lcpioneers.com live. We're joined by head coach of Lewis and Clark Swimming, Chris Fantz. You can watch the show live with us Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and on demand at youtube.com/lcpios. And we're just trying to keep looking at what could be ahead. As you mentioned, Northwest Conference saying competition suspended till at least January 1st. And so looking at possibilities that are out there. And one thing that caught my attention was the idea of virtual swim meets, which I didn't know were a thing, but in talking with you, that's actually something that's a little more common than uncommon per se. You're at least, swimming, the sport itself, knows about them. It seemed like it was something that's made up to me, right? So I was impressed to hear that. But can you walk us through what the idea of a virtual meet looks like in the sport?
Sure. Yeah. It's I mean, it can be done a lot of different ways, but and none of it is certainly our ideal system for how competition goes intercollegiately. But in swimming, there is a long history of doing things. When I was a kid, people talked about postal meets, which was like it sounds like mailing your times to somebody else, but really pretty quickly that can transform into telephone meets. I was talking to Bill, one of our assistant coaches, about that yesterday, and it's really a matter of you swimming races in your pool, timing them, and swapping the results with somebody somewhere in the world. And so, while not the same as having those other bodies in the opposite numbered lanes going head to head, it can be a way to kind of mix things up and introduce a little different competitive variable, knowing that it's almost like I try to not get too far out of the scope of my sport, but it seems more like time trialing in bicycle racing or something, where you're putting out your best effort, knowing it's going to be stacked up next to the next person's best effort, even if you weren't diving in the water at the same time as them. And so, not unlike big swim meets where you have 6 or 8 or 12 heats of something, that your time is going to match up with somebody 3 heats later and all the people who swam in the heat before you, even if you weren't going head to head. So there are ways to kind of build that motivation factor into the racing. Now, do I think our competitions in the spring will be virtual swim meets? I don't know. I think it's too early to say on that, and that's certainly not our primary focus as a conference. But a lot of us coaches in the conference have talked about, even if it's informal, even if they're non-official, doing things like that this fall as we kind of gear into our training, and yet don't have that normal outlet of swim meets, later this month or all through November, where we're hitting the road and competing. We can still kind of gear up for some, fun but competitive kind of scenarios. So they can look any number of ways, but the luxury, I guess, of swimming is that we can put one swimmer in one lane, an electronic timing system, and get actual times, and those can stack up against what somebody else is doing somewhere else, which takes a lot of the complexity of team travel or of hosting people at your facility during a quarantine time. It takes that out of the equation and still can get some spirited competition. So that's one possibility, I think. As coaches and with our conference commissioner and with all the decision makers at the AD and administrative levels, what we're trying to do is put together swim competitions that will look like dual meets and championships, like we always do. So that's obviously the end goal, but a virtual competition is a thing that can be done in swimming, where it's hard to picture that working in a lot of sports. So that's one possibility, or a thing we can kind of dip into to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, hypothetical certainly, and we'll let everyone know as soon as there's official word on what we're doing. But I'm happy you explained that because I hadn't thought of that as a possibility. And the spring is clearly something we're hopeful for, and that includes our Hall of Fame induction because we're excited
Hmm.
to welcome in different folks, individuals, teams to our Lewis and Clark Athletics Hall of Fame, and that includes a former swimmer as well. Lindsay Nixon is going to join the class of 2020. We are expecting to have all of the individual inductees on our show next week, and that would include her. What are your memories of Lindsay and her induction into the Hall of Fame?
Ah, all kinds of memories of Lindsay, and this is exciting for, I think, for us and for the swimming program, certainly for Lindsay, and it's kind of is pretty near to my heart because it'll be the first person I've coached at the head coaching level who's both performed at that level and been out of school long enough that this is a thing we're talking about, and those years kind of creep by and then they start to seem like they race by. So the fact that that we're now to this point with the young folks I coached at Lewis and Clark when I first got here are now eligible and being considered for something like the Hall of Fame is pretty cool. And I got to LC at the beginning of Lindsay's junior year, so I got the privilege of kind of seeing her class through their last 2 years, and that was a super strong class in the history of LC swimming. One of the best classes I think in our conference in a long time. So that was cool to finish out and kind of wrap up her collegiate career and conference championship individually by in her senior season, and also some pretty tremendous relays that she and her teammates were part of rewriting most of our record board by the end of their time here. Certainly on the relays, and then across a pretty wide range of other events. But Lindsay was is and was an energetic person, and she swam all kinds of races, but was relatively versatile, and one of the more versatile kids we've had through the team in a long time, in that she dominated the individual medley events, 200, 400, so swam all the strokes, but could swim a number of those strokes on their own and be pretty darn competitive, certainly in the fly, but she swam breaststroke here and there and swam most of the relays. And so that's really swimming distances from 50 up to 400, which is a pretty significant difference, often in preparation, but it's a thing you see from people who are IMers, but with that background to both do the endurance work, but also get up and sprint, because most of the relays in swimming are certainly more sprint focused. So yeah, it's that's a big one. That's an exciting one, and certainly proud of her and the work she did, and it's exciting to get recognition for the work she did here and with her teammates that certainly I think lifted her up and allowed for some of that competitive success and the training environment that makes doing that work more fruitful, certainly more possible as well.
Well, we're excited to have her on the show sometime next week. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us on this Tuesday, and I hope with all of the uncertainty, you've still been able to find time to get some quality photos of the fall foliage. I mean, you've always had an eye behind the camera. I hope that's still happening.
Oh, thanks for saying that, Ryan. Yeah, it is. I gotta post more of them, but yesterday was actually a big day, just getting out and walking around campus. Things have been weird for a long time with with quarantine and kind of sorting through the pandemic, but the fall leaves have they've really kicked in the last couple of weeks, up and down Terwilliger on the way to campus, and then I spent some time walking around yesterday with a recruit, and then just the trip back to my office, kind of soaking in campus, and I think that's the thing we talk about a lot, of what the idea of doing college, which can be busy and stressful at times in the relatively serene, amazing environment of campus is like. And that's not lost on me, but sometimes I think we do lose sight of just what like a walk across the grounds without hurrying too much can do for you. So I took quite a few shots between a parking lot and the manor house and back to the pool yesterday, just appreciating the things I've always loved about campus and remembering that times are weird and people wear masks, and yet we're still doing college, and our kids are on campus and they're training, and campus has welcomed all of us back in its splendor. And fall is my favorite time on campus, since you brought that up. So it's pretty cool soaking that in right now.
Yeah, I concur, my friend. Fall is the best time for sure. I just walk around with a pumpkin spice latte. That's the goal for me. Hey, Chris Fantz, always love having you on the show. It's always great to talk to you and miss you for sure. Thanks for all you do to help our student athletes, and your time for us today on the show on lcpioneers.com live.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate talking to you.
Absolutely. Chris Fantz, thanks so much. It is the best time of year. Fall, without a doubt, the best time of year. And Lewis and Clark's campus absolutely reflects that. So if you follow the swim team on Instagram, LC Pios Swim, you will definitely see some of Chris's best shots of campus. I admit that there are certain sources I go to when we put things on the LC Pioneers Instagram when it comes to our photos of campus, and probably no less than 1 out of 8 photos probably came from Chris. So he's been super helpful in that regard. And like I said, not an exaggeration, great eye behind the camera for sure. He can be our nature photographer whenever he'd like. Excited to continue the conversations tomorrow. Matthew Seimer will join us from men's golf. Logan Kyle from men's track and field now secured for our Thursday slot, which is what Coach Fantz was nice enough to bounce up a couple of days, because we were planning to have Logan today and he couldn't make it. So we shifted him to Thursday, and Chris joined us today. And then we'll talk to a professor of environmental studies, Jim Proctor, because the Environmental Studies Symposium is coming up later this month. So we'll have a chance to see what that's all about, and including some of Chris's former student athletes. The environmental studies program at Lewis and Clark is absolutely superb, and the symposium is such a big part of that too, that experience for students. So excited to ask Professor Proctor about those things and see what we need to know heading into that symposium. I think the 23rd annual symposium coming up later this month. So excited to talk to Jim about that on Friday. Thanks to you for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. Big thanks to Chris Fantz for being our guest today. I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks for having fun. It means a lot to us that you're joining us for these conversations, for things like the PioStream Watchback. It's certainly been great to stay in touch with you virtually through the show. You can join us again tomorrow as you can, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. Just type in lcpioneers.com/live, and then you can also see these on demand at youtube.com/lcpios. So until we talk to you again tomorrow, thanks for having fun. As I mentioned, we will see you again soon for more of lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream. Goodbye, everybody.
I'm Ann Bentley. I'm an associate professor of chemistry, and in this research group, I supervise the 2 students working in the Rogers program this summer in our lab. The brown bag experience is a good chance for students to get experience presenting their work that they've done in the lab, especially to an audience that's not technical.
What's intriguing about the brown bag experience is it incorporates all of the Rogers program. So I'm able to hear people in the psychology department and what research they're doing, but it also gives us the opportunity to share our research with the greater science community at Lewis and Clark. And for incoming students, the summer program is really beneficial for getting opportunity in research. So I've had the opportunity for research in the past, but other students may not have the same opportunities. So it's nice to work in a professional lab setting and potentially have the opportunity to publish a paper, which looks really good moving on into doing professional research out in the field.
The students grow a lot during the summer in their ability to learn the techniques and apply the techniques and suggest their own ideas for what could come next and interpret their data. It's just a big, usually if they haven't done research before, they learn a lot in that short period of time.